Welcome back to Left Coast News, your look at the politics, policies, and power players shaping the West Coast. If you've been watching the Sunday shows or scrolling through California political Twitter lately, you have seen Governor Gavin Newsom on an absolute media blitz. He's going on every camera that lights up, framing the current federal investigation into his administration and his wife's nonprofits as a top-down politically motivated hit list, orchestrated by President Donald Trump to crush a 2028 Democratic rival. It's a compelling narrative and it plays right into the usual red versus blue playbook. But here we like to look at the actual dockets, and when you look at the calendar, Newsom's primetime defense completely falls apart. Because while the governor wants you to believe this started the day Trump stepped into the Oval Office, the actual paper trail reveals this was a homegrown, California native corruption probe that began years ago under the Biden administration.
From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth.
To understand how the FBI ended up infiltrating the governor's inner circle, we have to look back to the summer of 2024. Joe Biden is in the White House, Merrick Garland is running the DOJ, and the federal government is heavily controlled by Democrats. Right here in San Francisco, the spark didn't come from a directive out of Washington, it came from the bottom up. Whistleblowers, internal California state workers, and local political insiders quietly approached the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of California. They flagged a major red flag, a dormant, inactive state campaign account belonging to former California Attorney General Javier Becerra. The whistleblowers alleged that high-ranking Sacramento operatives were treating this old fund like a private $10,000 a month piggy bank to fund no-show jobs and luxury lifestyles. Because those local whistleblowers stepped forward in mid-2024, a federal judge found enough probable cause to sign off on a massive step, intercepting phone calls and data. The FBI began rolling tape on the Newsom political machine long before the 2024 presidential election was even decided. The person who actually agreed to cooperate and secretly record conversations for the FBI was Alexis Podesta, a massive powerhouse Democratic consultant right here in Sacramento. To understand how Alexis Podesta became the central figure wearing a wire for the FBI, it helps to look at her deep roots in California politics. She is far from an outsider. She is a foundational member of the Sacramento Democratic establishment. Before opening her own private consulting firm, Podesta spent years climbing the ranks of both state and federal government. Early in her career, she served as the director of scheduling for late U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein. She became a key player under former Governor Jerry Brown, serving first as his Director of External Affairs and Chief of Protocol. In 2017, Brown appointed her to his cabinet as the Secretary of Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency, a massive state department overseeing civil rights, consumer protection, and housing. Between government stints, Podesta built powerful connections in the private sector. She worked as a government relations manager for the Walt Disney Company, and later served as a senior advisor to the CEO of Pacific Gas and Electric. Eventually, she founded her own political strategy firm, the Podesta Company, which managed major political accounts, campaign funds, and corporate clients in Sacramento. Her tie to the current investigation boils down to her close relationship with Dana Williamson, Newsom's former chief of staff. In late 2022, Williamson left her private political consulting practice to go to work directly inside the Capitol as Governor Newsom's right hand. When she left, Podesta inherited Williamson's book of clients and political accounts. Among the accounts Podesta inherited was the dormant campaign fund of former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra. According to campaign finance filings and court records, Podesta's firm received roughly $180,000 from that dormant fund and transferred it to the spouse of another political operative under the guise of consulting services. When the FBI intercepted these transfers during their mid-2024 whistleblower investigation, they approached Podesta. Her attorney later stated that Podesta had simply inherited the setup from Williamson and had no idea the payments were fraudulent. To avoid criminal charges herself, Podesta fully cooperated with the Department of Justice and agreed to secretly record her conversations with Williamson, effectively blowing the federal case wide open. For our listeners outside of the Sacramento bubble, Williamson wasn't just some low-level staffer. She was Gavin Newsom's trusted, longtime chief of staff. She was the gatekeeper to the West Wing of the California Capitol. Williamson was ultimately indicted in late 2025, months before the administration changed in Washington, for bank fraud, tax evasion, and lying to the FBI. Prosecutors detailed her using over $1 million in fraudulent business deductions to fund private jet travel, luxury villas in Mexico, and a $15,000 Chanel handbag. Just a couple of months ago, in May 2026, Williamson officially pled guilty. So how does this circle back to Gavin Newsom and his wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom? When a chief of staff catches a federal case, investigators don't just pack up and go home. They follow the money trail. And that trail led investigators straight to the first family's financial ecosystem, specifically millions of dollars in behested payments. In California, these are donations a politician solicits from giant corporations that get routed to a favorite nonprofit. Newsom has acknowledged asking major corporate interests, many with massive business pending before the state of California, to donate more than $4 million to his wife's charity, the California Partners Project. Federal investigators are now digging into whether those corporate donations were filtered through that charity and funneled directly into his wife's private, for-profit film production companies. Is Donald Trump's DOJ aggressively capitalizing on this case? Absolutely. Federal line prosecutors are under immense pressure from Washington to build a definitive case against Newsom. There is zero doubt that the White House is weaponizing the optics. But there is a massive, undeniable difference between a president inventing a fake investigation out of thin air to destroy an enemy and a DOJ simply inheriting a raging, pre-existing corruption case built on California whistleblowers, California wiretaps, and a chief of staff who already took a felony plea deal. Gavin Newsom can go on TV and blame Washington all he wants, but the whistleblowers were talking, the FBI was wiretapping, and his inner circle was collapsing under the weight of his own greed long before Donald Trump even returned to the White House. When you cover the West Coast, you learn to ignore the national spin and watch the local paper trail because the calendar never lies. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person we built this channel for. Left Coast News exists to cut through the noise and bring you straightforward analysis of the stories shaping Washington, the Pacific Northwest, and beyond. If you found this video valuable, please subscribe and follow us wherever you get your content, including YouTube, Rumble, Brighteon, BitChute, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you'd like to help support independent journalism, you can also join us on Patreon. Patreon is free for now. You'll find the link in the description below. And if you think this story matters, share it with your friends and family. That's one of the biggest ways you can help this channel grow. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you agree with this analysis, or do you see it differently? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching Left Coast News.